Let's turn first to Chris Prudhome, who's a Republican strategist and Fox News commentator. Chris, you're going to remind my listeners of the early days of Trump 1, as it were. But before that, if I can just ask you to reflect on this idea that it's racist and a misogynist country. Have I suddenly been transported back to Tennessee in the 1950s? Morning, Chris.
Morning, how are you?
Good, thank you. How do you react to this misogyny and racism charge?
Well, first of all, I'll say this. I think people have their own perspectives, right? And I respect many people's opinions. But at the end of the day, it's time for a country to unite and come together as one. Look, he's obviously president-elect, 47th president of the United States. It's time that we all come together. He's had a challenging time, right? Obviously, people say what they want to say about the felonies. I respect that. I get that. But I have my perspective, and I call it a manufactured felony. Look, at the end of the day, he overwhelmingly won. I will say this: that this hasn't happened since 2000. Obviously, he won the popular vote. He won the electoral vote, and obviously winning the Senate as well. And I know we're still working on the House. Look, at the end of the day, I mean, to me, it doesn't overwhelmingly support of where we are today in society. So I'd have to say, even for myself, it is unique to see and surprising to see, obviously, the support and grateful to see. So when you win the popular vote, it's one thing to win the electoral vote, but when you win the popular vote, right, and the support of the Senate, I know we're still finalizing the House vote as well. That says a lot for our nation. That's kind of where I am on it, and I think we have to come away. We have to get away from the rhetoric of the racism, and have to get away from and have to move towards how can we move forward as a country, as a nation, to move forward.
Well, let's talk about moving forward, Chris, because headlines and gossip is swirling about who might get some of the key appointments in Trump 2, his second term. But remind the listeners, his first term, in many ways, the White House was like revolving doors, some staff lasting only a matter of days.
Well, look, the reality at the end of the day is that you have folks like Kellyanne Conway, you have folks like, other folks who've been there for the long haul. Look, any office that when you're president of the United States, right, and you have people in positions of that type of power, right, I will say it's a challenge at any given time, right? So yes, was there a high turnover rate? Yeah. But what they call the A-list, right? For my A-list position, there was 38%. Even Obama and Bush had 31%, 29% turnover rate when it comes to the A position. It's just kind of, I guess you could say, par for the course when you have 8 positions. The reality is that Trump has a different style of running the nation, right? We all know he's very bits-oriented. He's very about getting things done.
Let's turn to Ambassador Anthony Gardner, who's a Democratic strategist and fundraiser, served as US Ambassador to the EU under President Obama, now Senior Advisor at Brunswick. And if I can actually just turn first, Mr. Ambassador, to your former boss, former President Obama. I mean, the legacy of the Obamas and the Clintons effectively was on the line with their endorsement of Kamala Harris. How bruised will they be feeling? Morning to you.
Good morning, Chris. They'll be feeling bruised, of course. And look, I'm one of the people who thought that the country had turned the page when we had voted in Obama, and we were looking back on that. We were rather ingenuous. The country hasn't yet turned the page. But I wouldn't want to say it's all about race, because it isn't. Very clear that the voters are sending a message. You know, over a year ago, I raised my concerns about the slipping approval for Biden with the Latino vote and with the African American, especially male vote. And I was told by the campaign to stop fretting, stop being a bedwetter, so to speak. And it's quite real when you look back at the slipping numbers over more than a decade. The Democratic Party really has a fundamental issue, and it's more than about race. It's about the cost of living. Even though on a real inflation-adjusted basis, people are a lot better off now than they were 4 years ago, still people are feeling that inflation has robbed them of their purchasing power. I think that is the real issue.
Let me ask you, the failure this time out for Kamala Harris, how far, if at all, has this put back the idea of a black female president of the United States?
Well, look, had it been Michelle Obama, we would have won this race. I do not have any I don't hesitate in saying that at all.
So why wasn't it? Sorry to talk over you, sir, but why wasn't it Michelle Obama? Because I would imagine, well, I know I agree, and I think most of my listeners would too, Mr. Ambassador.
She didn't want to. I mean, her views, I think, are quite clear. She's expressed it. She felt, quite rightly, she spent 8 years in this cage. She served her time. She did what she could. She was on the campaign trail this time, but she felt, I don't want to do that again. It's a very punishing role. I can't blame her, but I'm just saying, had it been Michelle Obama, it would have been an overwhelming landslide.
So is it never say never again, or could she be tempted one day, do you think, Mr. Ambassador?
I don't think she can be tempted. What I'm just saying is I would caution, jumping to conclusions that, the United States is not ready for a woman, the United States is not ready for a black woman, et cetera, et cetera. Look, let's not over-characterize. I think we need to find the right candidate who can connect with the voters, and unfortunately, we didn't do it this time. It was such an overwhelming defeat that it is time for a period of self-reflection.